Are you a business owner looking for real advice and input? You're in the right place. From concept to launch to growth, funding, and beyond. Welcome to Startup Hustle with your hosts. One once sold a business for $150 million. The other, the author of $1 Million Bedroom. Here are your hosts of Startup Hustle, Matt DeCoursey and Matt Watson.
1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.
And we're back. Another episode of Startup Hustle. Matt DeCoursey here with Sarah Hill, who'll be sitting in for Matt Watson today. Sarah, hello.
Hello, it's good to see you, and thank you for having me on your program.
I'm just excited that we have a true professional with us today, which I'll explain momentarily. But
Professional in quotes.
yeah, air quotes
Air
for
quotes,
all
big
in
air
podcast
quotes.
world
That's
to see. Oh
right.
wait, I
Hello.
forgot. You can check this out on the Startup Hustle YouTube channel. I got that out of the way. Well, before I introduce you, a couple things here. First off, today's episode of Startup Hustle is brought to you by Fullscale.io, the business I own with the guy that's not here today. And if you want to check out pictures from today, you can go to @Startup Hustle Podcast on the gram. With me today, I have Sarah Hill, once again, who is the CEO and founder of Healium. Now, you know, I like it when you're interactive, so I want you to go to try Healium. Now, I'm going to spell that. That's HEALIUM.com. And you can check out what Sarah does while we talk all about it. Sarah, once again, welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. Now, we're going to talk all about Healium, but I mentioned that you were a professional, so you worked for 20 years in this industry. So, and I say this industry, just meaning media in general. You used to be on TV.
TV and also radio. I started out at the NPR affiliate in Springfield more than 20 years ago and lived in a box, as
Yeah.
they say, for about 19 years, covering local news, TV news, rapes, murders, homicides, lived by a police scanner 24/7.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we won't get into any of that stuff today, but meaning like all of the crime. The only crime we'll discuss is the fact that I definitely do have a face made for radio. So
I wouldn't say that. And
Oh.
I think your YouTube listeners would, or YouTube watchers would beg to differ with you.
I used to joke around because sometimes people would say, okay, I'll watch your podcast. I'd be like, okay, you don't know what a podcast is. But now you actually can. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And that actually happens. Now, in regards to Healium, and once again, you can go to try HEALIUM.com. You guys are doing some really cool stuff, and we, meaning us at Fullscale and Startup Hustle, got to know you because you are a part of Launch KC's. They call it Business Accelerator. I don't really like that name because I feel like the businesses that are in the Launch KC program are a little further on down the line, like yours is. But tell us a little bit about Healium and what problem you guys are trying to solve for the world.
Yeah, well, the problem we're trying to solve is that life sucks, and we need some new tools in order to make us more self-aware of our own positivity and our own powers inside ourselves to heal ourselves. So Healium is a virtual and augmented reality platform that's powered by consumer wearables. What we're doing is harnessing the power of your body's electricity, as strange as that sounds, and allowing you to see your feelings via a smartwatch or via a brain sensing headband, and you can actually know when you're meditating or when you're doing a mindfulness experience, whether or not you're doing it right. So when you boil it down, Healium is a video game that you play with your feelings.
You know, and I'll just call this out because to some people that might have sounded a little crazy, meaning just like, you're going to do what? But the truth is your body does generate a lot of electricity, and it creates a lot of data points that a lot of people in the hardware and software space are trying to do everything they can to wrap their arms around. There's a lot of stuff that you can figure out from wearables, and you know, like, so what of those things are you guys really measuring? I know we left it pretty broad there, but like, what are the exact things that we're seeking to capture here?
So with an Apple Watch, for instance, heart rate, you can see your heart rate displayed on the screen, and you can use your power from that heart rate to hatch butterflies out of an augmented reality chrysalis. You can illuminate the planet by lowering your heart rate. So kind of like classic neurofeedback, biofeedback, but in an augmented reality spatial computing world. So for instance, with a brain sensing headband on your forehead, you emit a brain pattern known as gamma asymmetry. The more your frontal gamma leans to the left, that in decades of research has been associated with feelings of positivity. The more it leans to the right has been associated with depression. And so what we're allowing you to do, not in a diagnostic way, but in a self-awareness way, is to see that positivity, that brain pattern associated with positivity, do something and change your world. So we're visually rewarding the user for thinking positive thoughts or for quieting their mind, doing something beneficial to their body. They see the environment respond. Whether it be the higher you float up the side of a beautiful waterfall in virtual reality, kind of like Peter Pan, when you think happy thoughts, you fly. The deeper you float through a nebula in space, you're able to grow flowers. You are able to make it snow inside a magic snow globe just with your feelings. And it sounds really far-fetched, but if you go to our website and you watch some of the videos, you can see how your thoughts and feelings actually have power. That data from your wearables has power to control things not only in the virtual world, but even when you don't have on the goggles or you don't have our AR app in the real world as well. And with all of these 2D data dashboards that you're currently interacting with your data with, this is a way, more of a living, breathing data dashboard that you can interact with those brain patterns and heart rate so that you can know how better to control them, because the brain believes what it sees. Can you imagine hitting a tennis racket or something like that with your follow-through and never seeing that follow-through? That would be pretty tough, but yet that's how the mind is. We don't have the ability to see what's going on in our mind, and that's what Healium is. It's a feeling mirror that allows you to not only see those feelings, but again, to use it as power to control a virtual world.
I mean, I'm a big believer in the stuff that you just mentioned, and if I can see my feelings, maybe I can create some more positive ones. I think that people are often inherently negative, and then they expect positive results, and that's not really the way that works, or at least it doesn't need to. I mean, I think this is a very interesting subject that we're embracing today. Now, before we get too deep into that, Sarah, how the heck did you get into this?
Yeah, so essentially this is storytelling, and I've been an interactive storyteller. Started in AR back with Google Glass. I was a glass hole, right, for many years, and quite frankly, I lost it. I started having panic attacks, couldn't sleep at night, and I had to get out of the news business. And so I did that, and I went to work for a great company that was using a technology to help give a group of aging veterans the ability to virtually visit their memorials in Washington, D.C. You may have heard of the honor flight programs that are all around the nation that fly veterans on free flights to see their memorials. Well, we started providing them virtual flights through a program that we developed called Honor Everywhere, and we created a series of VR documentaries where veterans inside the goggles could feel like they were at the World War II memorial, even though they weren't able to physically travel because they were on too much oxygen or had a heart condition. And what we noticed in thousands of these demos that we gave, in veterans' homes, assisted living centers, is that VR appeared to be affecting their physiology. They weren't just watching it, they were feeling it. Their bodies would relax, they would take deep cleansing breaths, and it appeared to us as lay people, not scientists, that it appeared to be affecting their physiology. So I reached out to my co-founder now. Back then, many years ago, he had written a digital prescription for me to help me sleep by gluing electrodes to my forehead and watching a little airplane go above and below a threshold in a neurofeedback protocol. Long story short, that helped me sleep. And so I asked Dr. Tarrant, would you do some brain maps on these individuals who are using Healium and try to determine what is happening to their physiology. Is it having a beneficial impact? He sent me back a photo that I'll never forget of the high beta activity or the stress reaction in the user's brain before helium and then immediately after helium. And so Jeff and I set out on creating content to try to craft it in a way that could be beneficial for the user, using his expertise of neurofeedback, but making it more accessible so that you didn't have to glue electrodes to your forehead, and combining it with storytelling so it wasn't a boring plane that you were keeping up above or below a certain threshold. So Healium is, at its core, an interactive storytelling platform that's powered by this data from your wearables. And Jeff writes the brain-based principles, I write the stories, and Ricky Rockley designs and 3D models and develops these experiences in augmented reality and virtual reality. We've been around for about 4 years. Started just creating AR and VR for brands, Google, Facebook, and pivoted to product about 3.5 years ago.
So AR and VR are hot right now. I mean, it's just it's drawing a lot of attention, and there's a lot of energy and emotion being put into creating it. I think what you're doing is admirable. I like that you went about it by solving some of your own issues. You mentioned not having sleepless nights and needing to get away from the news. Well, the news is inherently negative. And do you think it was all that negative input that was causing the anxiety and everything else in your own thought process?
I can't say, but I can say once I got out of it, I got better.
Right.
So that's a data point. What we consume, whether it be on the news, and it's not the news's fault, you need that information to keep you safe, to know how to vote, to stay away from tornadoes, to know that there's a child molester next door. And we're not saying turn off the news. What we're saying is that all of us as humans really need to take a good look at our digital diet and ask ourselves, what kind of negativity are we pouring into our bodies in a way from our media consumption?
Right.
And if you don't have Healium or some other outlet in reality or in virtual reality, if you can't take a walk in a park, well, Healium is a walk in the park that you can bring right to you. And so if you're constantly have negative fiber that you're pouring in, it's going to make you sick, just like it made me sick. So, this product is for me as much as it is for the 41 million people out there, 300 million people out there, if you add in depression or addiction or emotional pain, or I'm going through a divorce, that needs some kind of positivity and hope, when sometimes you can't get that in the real world.
In my first book, Balance Me, it's about finding a healthy and successful balance in your personal, professional, and physical life. I compare being around negative people to similar, to you talk about moderating your digital diet. And I used the example, I said, if you knew that there was a room full of people up the hallway that had airborne illnesses, would you go in there and would you go in there and hang out with them? And B, would you really be surprised if later you got sick? And it's the same feeling, whether it's the news, or I actually do suggest less news, just for a lot of reasons. Some people watch the news like all day, every day, and depending on which channel or which input it can be really negative, and then you kind of have kind of a negative outlook on things. And also, you should be, if you are someone that can go walk in the park, you should know that there isn't a 99.9% chance that you're going to die doing it.
Right.
But that's, for a lot of people, psychologically, external output, especially things they can't control, are a huge source of anxiety. So I like the idea of being able to use AR and VR to be in a situation where you can control it. So I think it's a really interesting concept to kind of repurpose the way that, that cause-effect relationship. So how do you go about testing this stuff? I mean, is this just like, hey, try it out and tell us how it goes? Or, I mean, it sounds like a kind of a deep dish to dive into.
Yeah, so we have a few different published studies in peer-reviewed journals. And a lot of the studies have been done with hospital-grade EEG.
And what does that stand for?
Electroencephalogram.
Okay.
So in the hospital, people who have seizure activity, you might have seen they put a big cap with a bunch of different channels. We use 24 channels with an S-Loretta scale that basically analyzes all that data on the content that we create to know what is this content create, how is it shifting brain patterns, and is it shifting in a positive way or not? And sometimes we don't get the answer we want. So for instance, we had a piece on our platform where you're on this beautiful bluff, but it was not lowering that activity significantly. In fact, it was raising that activity in some users. And what we found through surveys was that beautiful bluff was really beautiful to be up there for some people, and
Fear
for
heights.
other people, they were scared to death that they were going to fall over,
Sure.
the side because it was real to them. So data points like that to us as content creators are valuable for us to know, are we meeting the mark? So these are, the future VR-ceuticals, AR-ceuticals for anxiety. All of these will be used in the future for sleep, for pain. There are some VR companies using VR for depression, for stroke. I mean, name any medical condition, and chances are there's an XR, meaning both virtual and augmented reality, an XR company that's creating some kind of ceutical for it. And so, we really want to know with our VR ceutical, what are these doing to the brain and also the heart? So you can measure via hospital-grade EEG, via skin conductance, via heart rate monitors. And what has been able to be shown about Healium in those studies is that our virtual reality reduces by a third significantly, quickly, and as a matter of 4 minutes, moderate anxiety. And you can see that not only before stressful situations, but even on everyday use. So for instance, the American Red Cross partnered with us on a study looking at using Healium before blood donations. Blood donations, obviously a high, anxiety for certain people who aren't used to that needle poke. And it found that it not only reduced tension, but increased feelings of calm, increased feelings of happiness before they got the stick. So, the value as a completely drugless solution in a day and age where, we've got the opioid epidemic looming, there's a real...
I don't think it's looming. I think it's like
here, yeah.
It's like a tsunami that's already flooded the plain.
Right. This is,
Yeah.
a completely drugless way, data-driven, that you can reduce your moderate anxiety quickly. And not only that, but you can be able to control those feelings because you can see them. It establishes that mind-body connection.
As we stop and pose for pictures that you can see
Yeah,
on
little
the
pink
gram.
headset.
I do. I think, as far as AR, VR headsets go, pink is always my first choice.
Absolutely. We also have purple, green, camouflage.
I'm pink all the way. It looks rose gold to me.
There you go. That's right.
It's funny. I have a rose gold laptop and it does look a little pink. And people say to me all the time, they're like, "Dude, do you have a pink laptop?" And I say, "Yep, sure do."
It's a great color.
All the way. It reduces my anxiety, right? So earlier you mentioned taking what was the veterans, the flight?
Aging veterans,
Yeah, what was
World
the-
War II, terminally ill and aging World War II veterans who aren't able to travel on an honor flight.
Honor flight. So you mentioned that. Now, is your product structured around helping elderly veterans, any particular genre or type of person?
So here's the thing.
Are people a genre? Is that a thing?
Yeah. Anxiety is a layer in 60% of all illness and disease. This is a product that is multi-generational and multi-age. We have someone who uses Healium who talks about how he uses it with his grandson, our augmented reality app. And he puts his grandson on his belly, and together they can learn how to calibrate their breathing. And he learned how when he lowered his heart rate, the planets light up. It's a very visual, easy thing for him to remember, so that when he then gets in another stressful situation, he can remember what he needed to think about in order to make the planets illuminate. So Healium is used in assisted living centers, nursing homes, hospice. It's also used by parents of college-age children as trying to find a tool for them to regulate their anxiety. It's used by 12-year-olds to help them establish in an easy way a mind-body connection. We have a school in the Chicago area that's giving kids helium outs instead of time outs. When a kid gets in trouble, what do? You might separate them from the situation, but what do they do when they're separated? This is an easy way that can allow them to self-regulate those emotions when they're in a stressful situation and have the ability to see them. Helium's been used on the flight deck of the USS Nimitz. It's used by moms and dads. So we don't like to pigeonhole anxiety because it's a layer in up to 90% of doctors' visits. And we really see it as something that should be in everyone's medicine cabinet, as mental health armor, as resiliency for not only yourself, but your family member who's had a bad day. I mean, you have a 5-year-old or young children. You know what to do when an 11-year-old comes home and says they've skinned their knee or they've cut themselves physically. But, what do you do when they come to you and say that they're not, emotionally feeling okay? Helium is not meant to be any kind of replacement for psychotropic medication or for therapy. Obviously, that's the gold standard. But as, a tool that you can break out in a situation, a situational stressor, and have a drugless way that you can distract them from whatever is bothering them in their current reality is a powerful tool.
So really, in the end, I mean, it's the anxiety treatment that's the core of what you're chasing.
Self-awareness,
Okay.
tool for anxiety and the self-management of anxiety. Obviously, you're not going to use helium in replace of cognitive behavioral therapy, or again, not as a replacement for psychotropic medication. But for people on a lower spectrum of a moderate anxiety, perhaps it's not of a level where you need to seek professional help. You can escape in a mindfulness experience and become, again, more self-aware of how the power to control those emotions is inside of you. You might not have known that until you saw on the screen your heart, your brain patterns reacting.
It's funny. I've kind of been doing some of this to myself. If you hang around with me enough, you'll see me reach up and take my pulse. I actually take my own pulse. I do it a lot, just kind of self-monitoring myself. I'm sure I could do it with any number of wearables, but it's been a habit of mine for a long time. And I am very, very much acknowledged being a high ADHD person. You talk about calming the mind. Oh, wow, I wish. I mean, I don't have anxiety. That's never really been an issue for me, but the whole concept of calming or slowing down the mental pattern, there's so many things going on in my head. I would enjoy slowing them down, and sometimes I'm quite excellent at controlling them, at which point I can do really amazing things, and then sometimes it's a battle. So yeah, I think that'd be interesting and I'm looking forward to trying this and seeing, what that reaction would be. I'm also a little scared that if I were to visualize my own feelings, I might be like, ah. So that's a challenge. And you mentioned having kids and doing different stuff. I have a 5-year-old daughter, as we mentioned, and most of our listeners are aware. My daughter might have gotten 99.9% of my DNA. That's why when I found out I was having a daughter, I wanted to name her Payback. My wife did not go for that, so Dylan is her name.
Much better, Dylan.
Yeah, but she's she's got that same kind of tendency, and you talk about that mindfulness. I actually have a signal. It's almost like a little hug, and that when I do that to her, it means try to pull that energy back in. So I think that's pretty interesting. So we've mentioned a lot of different things, and you have some stuff here today. Would you classify yourself as a software company?
We wouldn't classify ourselves as a software company. We would classify ourselves as a VR, AR,
Okay.
interactive content company.
Okay.
It's a very unique kind of content that's meant to be self-care.
Okay, but in that regard, though, you don't make an actual hardware piece?
We're hardware agnostic.
Okay.
Eventually, any wearable that you have
Sure.
will be able to work with Healium. Right now, it works with 2 Apple Watch and a Muse meditation headband.
Yeah, and that's what you have. And so and for those of you looking on YouTube, or check it out, and if you were at about the 25th minute here. Now, I've seen these.
Muse 1, not
Yeah.
Muse 2 yet, Muse 1.
So I've seen this, and this is it looks kind of almost like headphones in a way, but this strap that goes across the front, this is what will sense the frontal lobe, or something that I'm probably not qualified to speak about. So
Yeah,
this
it's like
is,
headphones for your brain,
so
literally.
I mean, they kind of look like it. I mean, this looks like, certain headsets, but
And
they
you
would,
put it on your front of your
strap
forehead,
would go on the front.
and then it goes behind your ears.
Now I'm wearing headphones right
And
now, so that's not possible.
It
But,
just has a little EEG strip on the front
okay.
that's measuring that front area of your forehead. Obviously, it's not meant to be diagnostic in any way. It's not going to tell you you're positive or negative. That's not the purpose of Healium. The purpose of it is that you see it as a haptic, almost in a way, as an input, and you become self-aware. Oh my gosh, I've never seen my brain patterns before. Look what happens to my brain patterns when I think that I'm on a beach. Oh, it goes down. Look at my brain patterns when I think of my mother-in-law or something like that. Oh, it goes up. And we're using emotion recall, which is a powerful tool to shift brain patterns. Again, a tool that you have already inside of yourself. By thinking something, you can shift those brain patterns. But yet, we have never, as humans, some of us, unless you're monks or really good at that mind-body connection already, haven't discovered what we need to think about. So if you're able to see and get feedback to know, okay, if I'm thinking this way, that little firefly goes down, that's good. You learn, and the brain believes
Right.
what it sees.
So then the next piece here, and this is what am I holding here?
You're holding an Oculus Go. It has
Okay.
a pink vinyl wrap on it with a Heal, Heal, Healium, a sticker on it. And inside those goggles is our platform. It's a virtual reality app. We have augmented reality apps as well on iOS and Android. And inside there are more than a dozen different experiences for our pro subscribers. We also have a free app as well on the Oculus Store, and you can download it. And even if you don't have a wearable, you don't have a Apple Watch, or you don't have a Muse One headband, if you click no, I'm not using a wearable, then those experiences automatically go forward. And you still get benefit of, being in a beautiful place and passing through fractal animations. We had someone tell us that it gave them the sensation of ayahuasca. And at first I asked them, I was like, ayahuasca, and I had to Google it. And of course, my partner, Dr. Terrence, laughing at me, and it's a Peruvian psychedelic.
Yes.
And so,
That
these.
you shouldn't take, because it kind of can also melt your brain.
Yeah, I'm not advocating that,
Yeah.
but apparently this fractal animation that we have on our platform gave her some of those similar sensations of an altered state that, VR in some arenas is being likened to a cyberdelic, a completely drugless way that has value for individuals going through substance use issues. There was a study in Shanghai that showed that using virtual reality made individuals 70% less likely to want to crave an addictive substance.
Right.
So we're just scratching the surface on, what VRceuticals, ARceuticals can be used for. We have data to show that it, reduces self-report anxiety. People are using it to self-manage their anxiety. But it's really exciting to look down the path and see what other really fascinating use cases for other modalities that it can be used for.
Well, you mentioned the treatment and kind of heading off things that start to swell up with mild anxiety. I mean, and this is going to sound like a really obvious thing, but mild anxiety is the step on the way to full-blown anxiety. And When it comes to things related to substance abuse and stuff like that, I mean, those are the people that are often engaging in the use of things that, and these people don't really want to have that. They don't want to feel like they don't, most addicts don't want to use drugs. They do for reasons that they sometimes can't define, but it's a swelling sense of anxiety that they're often trying to head off. So I think if even any percentage of the time it's effective, then that is very worthwhile for pursuing. So, that's anxiety is it's interesting. It's not something that I've battled terribly myself, but I've been around a lot of people that have, and it's crippling for a lot of folks. And I think that, and the thing is like, so for some of the things you talk about, like some of the pharmaceutical treatments, you have Valium, Xanax, things like that.
Which has great value for people, and I don't want to give the impression that there are some people who can't even get out of bed without, it has great value for them.
But those are powerful things, and a lot of those people don't want to put that in their body either. Some may need to, and some may not.
Right.
But those are slippery slopes for a lot of people. Some people, it's like the same thing, with opioids, and you talk about so many people that have developed an addiction to it, and it didn't start because they were like out seeking drugs. They like went to have like a dental operation or something, and there was a lady in our neighborhood growing up that cracked a tooth and started taking pain pills for it, and it really did not work out well in the end. And it's kind of a sad story for a lot of people. So I really commend anything that, I think there's a lot of things that we're going to have to face as a society when it comes to treating a lot of the problems that we've self-created in some regards. So now, one of the things that, the subject of veterans brings up things like PTSD. Has this been effective in addressing any things related to that, or?
We don't have any data on PTSD. We do have veterans who are using that way. Apple just released an article this morning profiling one veteran who's using Healium, our augmented reality paired with an Apple Watch, that he uses it frequently during the week to remind him, what he needs to think about in order to lower that heart rate. Anxiety is a layer in PTS, as it is in 60% of all illness and disease. But this is not a cure for PTS, and we're not saying quit going to your doctor or quit taking your medication because this is the cure for PTS. It's not.
Right.
Are people using that way as a drugless, alternative? Yeah, much like they have other mindfulness and meditation apps on their phone.
Well, I don't think that just taking a pill is usually like. I think when you go to a doctor, they're not just like, hey, take this pill and all your problems are going to go away.
Right.
I mean, there's usually a whole, this is why, if you break your leg, you go to physical therapy afterward. You don't just take some pain pills while it hurts and then cut the cast off and you're like, oh, cool, I'm good again. You have to recondition a lot of different things.
But the future value of pairing, some drugless technology interventions with existing pharmaceuticals also has value, maybe perhaps in the future to decrease reliance on those pharmaceuticals or to make them more potent and more powerful in some way.
Right. Now, I noticed that, and I'm not being provocative here, but I noticed there's a resistance to not wanting to identify this as a cure for anything, and I'm sure that that's probably something that not only legally, but it's probably advisable, but what kind of challenges come up with things like the FDA or anything related? Because I don't think you can say anything is a cure in this day and age unless it really is like 100% of the time and whatever is.
Right. So this is a low risk intervention, and it's not something that requires FDA approval. We're not making claims that it's a treatment or a cure or a diagnostic tool. It's a self-awareness tool. And as such, the FDA recently came out with new guidelines for these kind of experiences as low risk. It's not anything that's consumed. It's not wiped on the skin. We're not putting anything into your head. So it's strictly mindfulness and meditation. That's with an input that comes from your consumer wearables. And as a self-awareness tool, self-care tool, is a wellness tool is the best way to describe it.
I'm looking forward to the input phase because I want to do that thing like Neo did in the Matrix, where he like uploads the entire. No, I want to know Kung
Right?
Fu.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I really am like looking forward to that day, and then when I can just know everything. But so as far as your business goes, and by the way, let's not breeze over this. We kind of skipped right past this. You were just featured by Apple in a blog about this technology, right?
This morning,
Yeah,
yeah.
we
they
should really
changed
highlight that again because we kind of, like I said, we kind of fired past that. But that's a big validating factor. And how does that feel?
it feels great to have a tool that is being used by people who struggle with anxiety. We had an opportunity to spend part of our summer at Menlo Park working with Apple engineers to try to perfect our products as part of an entrepreneurial cohort there. They helped us take a deep dive into our user interface, and ultimately our app was better for it. Because the app is better, that means it will be discovered by more people. The article was about one particular veteran who was using it to try to self-manage some of his own anxiety. It was just an app that you get on the App Store that you pair with your Apple Watch. Something very simple, but we're grateful for all of the people who've, specifically in the Kansas City area, in the Columbia area, in the West Coast, with groups like Women in XR, who rallied around us and mentored us to try to help us get to the next level on what we needed as far as product development or fundraising or anything like that. So we're delighted to have a product in the market, that people are using it. And I think we're just now, discovering and wrapping our mind around what future use cases can be used for Healium as it relates to sleep, for instance. We can see that high beta activity, that stress reaction, all those thoughts that ruminate in my head, and it sounds like in your head as well at night.
And by the way, I do have sleep issues. Like they're very well documented amongst people that I know.
Yeah,
I mean, you
I
get
used
all
to
these
as
things
well.
rattling around in your head, and like here's the thing: some of it comes from, excuse me, some of these things come from a general lack of structure that are often associated with the lives of entrepreneurs. I own the company; I don't have to be here at 9. I mean, I don't, and I can, and I've worked for myself or in a relatively unstructured environment for a long time. So you talk about like the mindfulness, and you mentioned a monk or being able to identify certain things. Well, I have moments of inspiration that are powerful, and I've harnessed them to find great success. And you never know when those moments are going to come. And part of like my maturity as an entrepreneur and a person in general is being able to recognize that and ride it. But with that, sometimes if you know me, I'll be like, yeah, I haven't slept in 2 days because I can't. It's not that I don't want to. I can't. Like I could, but I have to go take sleep drugs or something. And I don't do that.
Helium.
Well, but on
Takes
but Sarah, on the same side, I also don't fight it because being able to be the podcast is about the only truly scheduled and structured thing, and I've gotten a lot better at this over the years, but it still happens quite a bit. And it just happened to me last week. Between Saturday night and Wednesday, I slept 7 hours. And it's like, sometimes it's like I said, it feels kind of painful. You're like,
Yeah.
you can equate it to, I don't want to say like voices because then you sound crazy, but you get a lot of stuff going on. You're thinking about all these different things. And it's like almost like the opposite of anxiety. It's like excitement, so I've learned to try to, I want to try this out though and see it, because sometimes it's really not welcome. You're like, stop. But I always think if you try to block or stop your own inspiration, well, is that the last time you'll be inspired?
That's a good point, but sleep does have value.
It does. Yeah, I got to
It's-
say, honestly, though, sometimes some of my best and most insightful ideas and everything have come in these semi-delirious moments. And the only thing and that's why I find this to be really interesting, because I would almost like to study myself to be able to visualize the why, when, and where, because I feel like in those moments that they occur because I'm tired, because my mind is now not as able to have 10,000 thoughts a second or whatever's going on. So I don't really know. And for those that have listened to all the episodes, you've heard me talk about, at one point I had some of my most inspired moments while mowing the lawn. I haven't figured out why, but it's one year I paid someone else to mow my lawn, and at the end of that year I was like, you know what, I'm going to mow my own lawn again.
Right.
Like, what am I cheating myself out of? But
It's me and driving, same way.
yeah, and that's actually not. I've talked to a lot of people. It's not uncommon. It's almost like you're active enough to distract your mind. Some people talk about the shower, just different things. Sometimes working out, different stuff. And I've really been fascinated with human performance and the way the mind goes. I've had some ongoing conversations, and I will just say thought experiments with people that are really high performing. Some of my favorite have been with like really, really high performing musicians, because I can't decide when I'm going to be inspired. It happens or it doesn't. But these guys have to turn it on. They're in front of 10,000 people at 9 p.m. at night, and like, here it comes, and like, do it. And like, some people, certain types and genres of musicians, they don't play the same notes and the same songs every night. And how do you do that? Like, how do you unbottle the lightning?
And you do realize, anxiety is a layer in creativity.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 And on the way to anything worthwhile, there's discomfort. I mean, it's usually the way it goes. And I've had a lot of conversations with people about, what's the difference between being genius and being crazy? What's the difference between it being obsessed and being driven? And really the best answer we could come up with was, well, two. The first one was, who cares? The second one was, it's all external observation. So, if you feel like you're being driven and inspired, well, that's really your reality. And then the genius and crazy thing is definitely an outside point of view, because once again, who cares? That really was after like a year and a half of having those conversations. I asked someone that, and the guy was like, who cares? I'm like, you know what? You got a great
point.
A year and a half later of these conversations, you have a great point. But yeah, I think a lot of people, I think that this kind of stuff, and how cool is it that in this day and age you can get your hands on something like this? So
very accessible. It's in the stores.
Yeah, and that's nuts, and I think that's really cool. So once again, before we come to a thrilling conclusion here, go to Healium. That's HEALIUM.com. You said your apps are available in the App Store,
Yeah,
and
so
that's iOS and Android?
And Android, and also in virtual reality on Oculus Go will be on the Quest later on. But if you go to the Oculus Store and just search HEALIUM.
Okay. And, once again, that's really cool stuff. So how much do these pieces cost?
So our augmented reality apps, one-time download is $4.99. Highly affordable, and we'd encourage people use AR as an on-ramp to get you into VR. We have a free virtual reality app if you just want to try it without a wearable and see how it works. Our pro version of our software, it's $29 a month for a single user license. That's about less than $1 a day.
Right.
And if you think about, what are you spending on your mental health? What are we spending on our mental health? Not a whole heck of a lot. And this is, mental fitness in a way that, again, allows you to train your brain and become more self-aware of what you need to think about to change your virtual reality and, in turn, your reality.
Well, that's what I really like about it, and I like the train your brain part, because, look, success is trainable. I mean, it's repeatable. There's success demands payment in advance. You're not going to just wake up tomorrow and be like, damn, I'm successful. I mean, that's not the way it works. Like, no matter who you talk to, I mentioned talking to people that were high performing. Maybe I'll write another book about that someday. I'm just fascinated with high performing people, and really, in the end, you never find any of them that are like, yeah, I just woke up one day and I was like freaking awesome at everything. No, they worked really hard at it. In the same way that you teach yourself how to play guitar, you can teach yourself how to think, and teach yourself how to think successfully and have a positive outlook about life. Like, people ask me all the time, they say, what do I need to do to make more money? Okay, well, first off, quit thinking about money. Get good at something. That would be a good start. And second off, you have to believe you can do it. And that's the biggest, I mentioned my book, Balance Me, earlier. Literally, in the introduction, it says if you aren't willing to accept the fact that you're probably your own biggest problem, just put the book back. You're going to be disappointed. I can't help you. And you need to understand that change is hard. It requires constant updating. It requires fine-tuning and reassessment. And that is that kind of mental training. Now, I love the fact that you can actually do some things to use technology to get out in front of that. So we'll see how that goes. I'm probably going to, we'll do a follow-up episode in 6 months, and I'll just be
I'd
like,
love for you to try
I'll be like, I know Kung Fu.
That's right.
I want to see, I'm really fascinated with
Have you
the
ever
whole
seen
thing.
your brain patterns before?
No,
in
because
your real time?
I'm afraid if I put this thing on that it'll be like Drew Barrymore in Firestarter, and I'll like melt it, like the whole studio will catch
Air.
on fire. There'll be a
No.
weird guy with an eye patch trying to chase me down.
Well, and you can adjust the difficulty settings too to make it impossible to fail, because everybody's brain patterns are different. Just because your arm is longer than my arm doesn't mean that it's stronger.
Yeah,
it's just
sure.
different. So the settings in the app, you can toggle the difficulty settings, the threshold barriers, higher or lower, so you can train at whatever threshold that you want to. And that's really key, because you don't want to make it hard on yourself when you first start out.
I do.
You want to have some success.
Oh.
So you build up that confidence that you know what to think about to make, your brain patterns or your heart rate go lower.
I would want to fail a whole bunch up front, so when I win, I'll be like, yeah. Like, I don't want it to be easy. I think that's kind of interesting.
It's gamified in a way in that, for instance, with your heart rate or with your brain patterns, you hatch butterflies, and for each butterfly that you hatch, you get a point. And pretty soon, around the room in augmented reality, you see all of these butterflies that are essentially your feelings in a way, your calm thoughts or your quiet mind or your heart in a way that's all the way around the room. So you have some sense of accomplishment of, those are my butterflies that
Can we make an entrepreneur's version that just has a cash register and like a hand like pulling it, and it's like cha-ching,
Right.
cha-ching? I feel like so many of our listeners would probably respond favorably.
Helium got me through, and it still gets me through entrepreneurship. And it's the toughest job. Sleep, finances, marriages, children, and having to do all of this. And I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. But
We've done episodes on founders' depression.
Yeah.
Like, it's real, it's legit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because as an entrepreneur, like, it's going to put you through the ringer. I get a lot of people that want advice on their quote idea. We'll just leave it that general. And I said, look, regardless of your idea or not, you need to know that, like, this is going to beat you up. It is going to challenge every part of your sanity, of your finances, of your relationships, of your mental fortitude.
Of your
And it is, time's the main part of that. And someone in here recently had mentioned that they became an entrepreneur because they wanted to spend more time with their family.
Oh.
Well, that was the reaction that came after, because it was like, wow, I got a real eye opener on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's now
You need some mental health armor.
yeah,
Again.
if you get it right, you can get a lot of those things the way that you want them and the way that you need them. But don't become an entrepreneur because you want to have ultimate control over your life, because sometimes being an entrepreneur is going to control your life. Not sometimes, usually always. But
Yep.
we'll see how that goes. Man, now I have anxiety. I'm going to have to
No,
my mental
no. We're gonna have
butterflies
to-
under
yeah.
control. I'm going to,
Float up the side of a waterfall.
man, I think that'd be good, but it's a good thing I know how to swim, or I might be in that same situation like the bluff. It's funny you mentioned that, and I immediately thought, because I actually don't do well with heights. Which
Okay, I won't show you that one. Then.
people think it's funny. They're like, but you're really tall. I'm like, that's not how it works, guy. Like, it's not. But it's, just like, I didn't even realize that I wasn't comfortable with heights until I went on a cruise and I walked down a glass staircase, and I literally felt like my stomach fell through the glass, like all the way down. And I was like, whoa, that's different. And yeah.
There are VR apps out that can now help with fear of heights.
Yeah, I
that
bet,
just
yeah.
desensitizes you, because in the goggles, you know, you see the glass and you feel like you're on a plank, but yet you're really grounded, you know, in reality. So it walks you through some of those different things.
And I was thinking about some of the things that cause people anxiety. You know, one of those that is, once again, I'm really far away from this. The more people I speak to, the more focused I become. But, you know, speaking to people in general, we were talking about that before we hit record. Some people come in here, we turn on the red light that says record, and they're like, and you're like, you were so talkative before this red light came on. But, you know, that's a real thing. And more people report being scared of public speaking than death. Think about that.
Yeah, there's a
Than
VR app for
death.
that too, public speaking.
Well, I was going to
Which
ask
one?
because, you know, my wife's in that ballpark, and she doesn't, you know, she thought about, and she's open about talking about it. It just doesn't make her feel comfortable. So
She needs a VR suitical for public speaking.
maybe, yeah. I'm gonna have to I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna buy like a 50-pack of these things so I can always I'm just gonna be walking around and just strap these things to my head all the time.
Get them for your entrepreneurs.
For my entrepreneurs?
Yeah, your entrepreneurs that you mentor.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, I'm gonna work with you guys to create, you know, the Startup Hustle version of it.
There you go.
I don't know how that would actually work. I'm gonna have to map that out. So, you talk about, you know, I've had some, back to the high performers. When it comes to entrepreneurship, the people I've talked to the best at it will all tell you that the greatest entrepreneurs are excellent storytellers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what's going on here.
Yeah,
So
you're not selling your product, you're selling your story.
yeah, you're selling your story, and you're selling yourself, but really you're selling your solution. And which you did quite effectively today.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's almost as if
good that I
you've
get a gold
spoken to
star.
people before.
A couple decades of
Yeah,
living in a
yeah.
box and
Yeah, but that's, I mean, it was apparent, and I think that's good, and I think that's important that a CEO of a company be able to. It's hard. It's hard. I talk to a lot of people, and they're like, you know, I'm like, who's the face of this? And they're like, I'm like, you guys got to go talk to someone about this. Just because you build it doesn't mean they're going to come.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
stories are core to our platform. I mean, we
Right.
do that every day. Essentially, these are stories and metaphors about waterfall and, you know, how you can rise up and take courage and do it, whether it be entrepreneurship or anything else. You know, think of Healium like a little huddle with your friends before you go into a big meeting or something like that.
Yep.
It gives you that confidence and that, you know, feeling that not only, again, in the virtual world, but in the real world, just like you powered up that waterfall or illuminated the planets, you can do that exact same thing. You have it inside you. You had it inside you all along.
Yeah. Well, it's practice. I mean, back to the musician thing or anything else. I mean, it is really practice. By the way, you said waterfalls enough. I think you'll appreciate the other day that I did listen to Waterfalls by TLC.
Ah, good deal.
Yeah, I don't know what brought that up, but we did listen to that here.
Don't
at the
go
office.
chasing waterfalls.
Well, apparently, unless you're in the AR VR world,
That's
and then
right.
you may want to climb
You
waterfalls.
with your gamma asymmetry,
Yeah.
your feelings of positivity.
And now you're just showing off. For those of you that are following our ongoing episode quiz, gamma asymmetry will be on the pop quiz. It'll be on the final, and it will have heavy weight.
Oh.
So
What about high beta?
yeah,
high
that
beta
too.
would be a
Oh
good
yeah,
one.
sure. And then a bunch of
Yeah.
acronyms like EEW,
EEG,
EEG.
electroencephalogram.
Yes.
BCI is another one that would be good for a pop quiz, brain-computer interface. And that's what these wearables, I mean, they're baking them into headphones.
Yeah.
So pretty soon, it has EEG sensors in the headphones. Instead of you deciding, what do I want to listen to today? It's going to scan your brain patterns. It's going to serve up what music you need, not what you think you want. But
Right.
it'll say, oh, Matt needs something to reduce the high beta activity in his brain.
be
It's
down
gonna,
with that.
Yeah, serve up that kind of music to you.
And music is like, I mean, I listen to music 8 to 10 hours a day. It's sometimes the only thing that it actually does have a really high effect on my ability to focus the same way that, you know, your product does. All right, so before we end this with doing our Founders Freestyle, a little recap here. So go check out Healium. That's TRYHEALIUM.com. There's apps that you can download. And remember, that's Healium, that has an A in it. You can check it out for Android, for iOS. There's all kinds of great stuff in there. Look, you're not going to understand how awesome some of this stuff is until you hook it up and try it. It might be for you, might not, but you're never going to know until you try. I think it's a pretty cool thing. There's a whole lot of different kinds of technology out there that can do a whole lot of different stuff. Don't be afraid to give it a shot. So as we get ready to finish with what we call the Founders Freestyle, which I'm buying you some time right now so you can think about I don't feel like you're going to get crushed by this, but we give everyone a closing moment. Sarah has grabbed the green stress egg, and she's like, I don't need this. She's juggling right now. Okay. So if you want to see that, you can check out the Startup Hustle YouTube channel, and also check us out on Instagram, which I don't think we mentioned before. You can go to Healium XR on Instagram or the Twitter. Is that how you say that? It's the Twitter, right? It's singular, right? There's only one.
Yeah, us techies are on the Twitter as well.
Kind of like
as Instagram.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Justin Timberlake that told me to get rid of the.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that what he said?
Yeah.
I think some people probably believe Justin Timberlake is the co-founder of Facebook.
Probably do.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean he's not?
No, I'd like it. I'd like Facebook more if he really was.
Right.
So, all right, that said, I'm going to turn the mic over to you. We'd like to end our episodes with the Founders Freestyle, which you can utilize for any number of purposes. You get to figure out how you want to close out your episode, and then I might say a few things, and then we will say goodbye.
Sounds good. Well, how long do I have, Matt? What's my wrap-up
Technically,
time here?
you have as long as you want.
Oh, really? I can just go on forever.
Yeah, now, but if you do get too far, then we might have to pipe in that music like they play at the Oscars when people talk too long.
I got you. You just give me a wrap-up sign. I'm well.
I'm not going to. I'm going to let you. It's a freestyle. I mean, as
Okay.
long as you're not like rambling or like becoming overly repetitive or doing something like reciting the Gettysburg Address.
Okay, I promise I won't do that.
I mean, if you can, I think that also could be impressive. But
Well, the world is no longer flat. It's becoming a place that we step inside our digital devices. And we as humans really need to be taking a hard look at our digital diet and what we're putting into our bodies. Because if we have too much negative fiber inside the media that we consume, it's going to make us sick. Just like it made me sick with not being able to sleep, that then led to panic attacks and then led to anxiety. So if I'm not saying turn off the news altogether, you need that information to know how to vote, to know who lives next door to you, to know what's going on in the safety in the weather. But if you're not taking time to either put in reality experiences, whether it be a real walk in the park or a digital walk in the park through things like Healium, then all of that negativity and negative fiber can definitely make you sick. Stress is a $300 billion people and profit killer. We're losing 20 veterans a day. We're losing 125 people a day to suicide. The opioid epidemic, that you've got a little more than that with the opioid epidemic. And suicide, is right up there. And so, to have a completely drugless solution that in a matter of minutes can take you somewhere else and give you some virtual peace has value not only for you, but for all of the other people who have to interact with you on a daily basis, who want to see you succeed and see you have resilience. So stress and burnout has been recently classified by the World Health Organization as a legitimate medical concern, and we can't keep popping pills. We're not saying that this is a replacement for any kind of psychotropic medication or that Healium is a replacement for cognitive behavioral therapy. It's not. It's something quick and easy that you can have in your medicine cabinet, or you can have before you give blood or get a blood draw or go to the dentist or any other painful procedure that gives you anxiety. A completely drugless solution that gives you a few minutes of virtual peace. And in closing, I would just like to say that your thoughts and feelings, they have power. Through these devices, you can see your brain patterns. You can see your feelings of positivity, your feelings of a quiet mind displayed on the screen, and control these virtual worlds. You can see your heart rate displayed on the screen. And the more that you know that those thoughts have power, you know that you can control things not only in the virtual world, but in the real world as well.
Well, thank you. I think that was very in depth. I'm not going to be as fancy, but I'm going to do that on purpose. All right, so I'm 44 years old, and when I was a kid, this thing came out called computers, and people didn't understand them. We didn't know what they were for. They were maybe a fad. There were different stuff. Now, my parents brought a computer home, PC, when I was, like as far as I can remember. And they didn't let me sit around and play games on it. They did things like there was a game I used to play called Math Blaster.
Oh, okay.
It was like Space Invaders.
Yeah.
Because we had an Atari and we spent time messing around with that. But my parents were real nuts when it came to they were cool with letting us embrace this new digital stuff that was, like I said, it was like people didn't know, what are computers for? Are these a fad? No one, who needs these? I only need these at work. Well, my sister and I both did, instead of playing Atari, we were playing games like Math Blaster, and there were some other, I can't remember the other ones. Well, my sister's a doctor now, and I've become a successful entrepreneur. With that, I look back and I attribute a lot of that mental training. I remember playing that math game, and I developed at least highly functional math skills that came as a product of training my thought process to do simple things. My wife always jokes around. She's like, I don't know how you do that, but I can do basic math on a high level. And I say basic usable math. I'm not the calculator guy. I'm not like, what's 914 million times 363? I don't know.
576,431.
Wrong. How did the number get smaller?
I just made
I
it
said
up.
39 million. But I do appreciate,
I should have done more math class.
By the way, but the point is at the time, sometimes things come along and you're like, I don't understand them. I don't know them. Hook it up and try it. This is a non-invasive kind of thing. The worst thing that's going to happen is you might have some fun. But there's a whole world of technology, and I got to admit, I'm going to go home and try this stuff. Why? Because I kind of realized during recording this that I haven't really done a whole lot with it, and I have this. I'm suddenly really fascinated with. I'm just a big believer that thoughts are things, and you can have a level of control and learning from them. And I really do want to wake up and be like, I know Kung Fu. But so much of that is really important. And I'm really fascinated with all the stuff that is going on. I'd really love for you to come back and keep us updated on the journey with this. I think that augmented reality and virtual reality are things that, it's funny, you also talk about being old. I remember being 18 and talking to a guy who's like, yeah, I'm starting a virtual reality arcade. Yeah, it failed in a month.
There are a lot of successful ones out there. The Void is a really neat one. People should check out.
Well, and some of that we weren't ready for that, but we're ready for that now. There's a level of computing power, and it really can seem very real, and there's a lot of really cool stuff. So I'm looking forward to giving that a shot. Anyway, if any of you need me, that's where I'll be. See you next time.